Amanda, welcome to Crafters Autonomous. Today I am going to be bringing you a new free crochet pattern to make this hat that I am calling the Knit Mimic Crochet Hat. This hat incorporates half double crochet stitches in a really fun way to create a knit-like look here along the edge and then kind of knit-looking ribbing going up and down. The weather near me has been getting colder, so I'm super excited to be able to have a nice cozy hat to wear, and this would also make a great Christmas present. This hat takes me somewhere in the 2 to 3 hour range to make. I am a pretty slow crocheter though. But before I get into showing you the pattern, let me just show you the hat and some different ways to wear it so you can see how awesome this pattern is. So first of all, you can wear it just like a normal beanie. I don't know what I look like though. Can you flip it toward?
You look cute.
Okay, you did reposition. I think I should have set up a mirror. So you can wear it this way. It's long enough that you can wear it kind of slouchy, or you can pull it down more. And you have the border here with the knit look. Another option is to inside out it. And instead of the knit look on the edge, you get this other fun design pattern kind of texture there. And again, like this, you can wear it as just a beanie. You can wear it slouchy. Another thing you can do is you can roll the hem of the hat up, but you can roll it up like that so you have the knit on this side sticking out, rolled back. Of course, you can do it the other way and inside it out, roll the rim back from the other direction and wear it. But it's a super cute, super soft hat and very easy to style and wear. So let's learn how to crochet the Knit Mimic Crochet Hat.
I'm going to use this I Love This yarn from Hobby Lobby. This is called Quarry Days, and I'm going to use a size K 6.5mm crochet hook. So it's time to start on this project, and personally I'm a big fan of working foundation stitches, and I'm going to show you how I do that. But if you don't want to try tackling the foundation stitch, you can start by chaining 25, and then on every chain except for the first one you will work a half double crochet stitch for a total of 24 half double crochet stitches. So here's how to start it with the foundation half double crochet. I'm going to start by making a slip knot and putting that onto my hook. And then I'm going to start by chaining 2. Some people chain 3 when they start foundation half double crochet stitches. I personally like to do 2. Just depends on your tension. So to work my first foundation half double crochet, I'm going to yarn over and then insert my hook in that very first chain stitch we just worked. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull it up through that one little stitch there. Then to finish the stitch, I'm going to yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 3 loops. And that is how you work the foundation half double crochet. To repeat that and work it the rest of the way down, we're going to yarn over, then in the base of the stitch we just worked, we're going to go underneath right here, and I like to go underneath both of those threads there, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, pull through 3. So again, that's yarn over, insert in the base of your previous stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, pull through 3 loops. And I'm going to repeat this all the way to the end until I have 24 foundation half double crochet stitches. But again, if you don't want to try tackling the foundation half double crochet, the other option is to start by chaining 25, and then in the second stitch and in all the remaining chains, you will work a half double crochet stitch. Just either way, whether you do the foundation half double crochet or you start with a chain, you want to end up with row 1 having 24 half double crochet stitches. So here I have worked 24 foundation half double crochet, and that is row 1. So now it's time to work row 2. I'm going to start by chaining 1, and the turning chain doesn't really count as a stitch or anything. And now in the first 22 stitches, we're going to work half double crochet stitches. However, there's a big catch. Normally to work the half double crochet stitch, we would yarn over, insert in the top loops of our stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. That's a normal half double crochet. What we're going to do is this half double crochet variant where it's worked in a back loop, and this is going to create the knit effect. So to work this, we're going to yarn over, and instead of inserting in the top of our stitch, we're going to find this bar right here, and we're going to go underneath it from bottom to top and work our stitch in that spot right there. So to finish it off, it's the same as normal. Yarn over, pull a loop through 1, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. The only change is where we work the stitch, so I'll show you that again. Yarn over, go to our next stitch. Here is the top of the stitch. So we're gonna find this bar that's like right below it and insert underneath there. And then finish our stitch by yarning over and pulling the loop through one, and then yarn over and pull the loop through all three. I'll show you that again. So yarn over, insert underneath this little piece on the back instead of the top of the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all three. By working on the back side, when we turn it over, it pushes the top of the stitch to the front and it creates this knit look. So all those V's from the top of the stitch, instead of working around those and hiding those with our new stitch, we're pushing that to the front to create that knit look. And for the rest of the project, we're always going to work our half double crochet stitches in that back loop. We're never working a half double crochet in the top. Always work these stitches for this pattern in this back loop on the back side, because that will push the stitchings to the front and create that knit look. Before I finish showing you row 2, I want to show you where exactly we're working the half double crochet stitch on some plain color yarn, just so that way in case the variegated yarn doesn't show up as well, you can see exactly where you need to work. So in this red yarn, I just worked a row of foundation half double crochet. I'm going to chain 1 and then turn my work. So if we look at the back side of the stitch, we have these V's that are open to the left. The tops of our stitches have V's open to the right. So that's one way to know if you're looking at the top of your stitch or the back. Then when we look at these V's open to the left, we want to find that bar on the bottom. That's where we're working. So to actually work a stitch in there, we would yarn over, insert under that piece of yarn, and then work a normal half double crochet stitch. If we go to the next one, we see this V open to the left. This up here is the top of our stitch. This is the back side of our stitch. So we're going to go to that bottom one from this V that's open right there to the left, insert underneath there, and work a half double crochet stitch. One more time, going right under there. So hopefully that gives you a really good feel of where exactly we're working these stitches. So I'm going to finish going down this row until I have done 22 half double crochet stitches. So looking at row 2 again, what I've done here is I have worked 22 half double crochet stitches, and I'm working all of those stitches on that back side. It's really important with this pattern that you count, and just as a quick note, if we look at the start of our row, because I opted for just a single turning chain, it might look like this is our first stitch, but this right here is our first stitch, so this right here is the top of it, just so you know when you're counting, so that way you can count accurately. Make sure you count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, and make sure you have 22 stitches worked evenly. Last thing to do to finish this row is to work a half double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches. So for this, we're going to yarn over. Again, we're going to work in the back side of our stitch. We're not working in the top, but we're working in underneath this bottom loop here. And in my first stitch, I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. Then I'm going to yarn over again, go to my next stitch, and it's this right here. If we roll it over, that's the top of the stitch, and this bar right here is the back side where we want to work. I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll end up with 5 loops on your hook, and then to work that decrease to finish it off, yarn over and pull through all 5 loops, and that works your decrease. Row 3 is similar to row 2, but a little bit opposite. We're going to again start by chaining 1 and then turning our work. Here you can see the ribbon created by where we worked. And this time, instead of working a bunch of half double crochet stitches and then ending with a decrease, we're going to start by doing a half double crochet decrease, and then we will just work evenly to the end. So to work that decrease, I'm going to yarn over, again working on this back loop here, go underneath there, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, go to my next stitch, and again always inserting under the back instead of in the top of the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 5 loops on the hook to work that half double crochet decrease. And now for the remaining 21 stitches, we're going to work a half double crochet stitch, but make sure to work it in the back side of the stitch instead of in the top of the stitch. So I'm coming to the end of row 3. I have worked 19 of my 21 half double crochet stitches, and I just want to show you where we work in these last 2 because the last stitch can be a little tricky to see. So for my 20th half double crochet, I'm going to yarn over, and this one looks similar to how it's been, where we have the V on top, open to the right, a V on the side, open to the left, and we're going to go underneath that bottom bar right there. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all three to work my half double crochet stitch. Now it might look like you've worked in all the stitches, but we haven't worked in the very last one. We still have one more to go to bring us to 21 half double crochet stitches. So we'll need to yarn over. But when we look at it, because I only chain one on this project, it tends to make that end curl. You can optionally chain two. I just find that it creates extra slack, and I prefer the tension of the chaining one. But if you wanted to, you could chain two, so it's a little easier to find. So if we roll our fabric here, this is the top where we have a V, open to the right. Roll it back a little further, and we find that V, open to the left. And we're gonna go underneath right here, and that's where we work that final stitch. And yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all three. So from rows 2 to rows 9, a bit of a pattern is going to form, but basically the idea is we're going to work rows of half double crochet stitches, but at one end we're always going to work a decrease. So at the even number rows, we're going to start by working half double crochet evenly, and in the last 2 stitches work a decrease. Then on the odd number rows, we're going to start the row with a decrease and then work a half double crochet in our remaining stitches. Each row, the number of individual half double crochets you work will go down by 1 because of the decrease. So in row 3, we worked a decrease and then 21 half double crochets. Now for row 4, we're going to start by working 1 less than 21, so 20 half double crochets across, and then in the last 2 stitches, work that half double crochet decrease. Row 5 will start with a half double crochet decrease, and then work 1 less half double crochet stitches than we did in row 4. So row 4 we worked 20, so in row 5 we'll work 19. And we're gonna keep repeating this basic idea all the way until row 9. In row 9 we'll start with a decrease, and then we will have 15 half double crochet stitches left. So let me show you what that'll look like. Starting row 4, we're gonna chain 1, turn our work. Because it's an even number row, we're going to start by working half double crochet stitches evenly. And again, as always, work in the back loop, not the top of the stitches. So for row 4, I'm going to work 20 half double crochets until I'm left with just 2 stitches in my row. So I've worked 20 half double crochet stitches. To finish row 4, I'm going to work a half double crochet decrease. So yarn over, insert in the next stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over, insert in the next stitch. So again, we want to find the top with the V open to the right, and then tilt it back and we'll see a V open to the left, and go under that bottom piece there, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 5 loops. Row 5, we're going to start by chaining 1 and turning our work. And in the first 2 stitches, we're going to work a half double crochet decrease. So again, yarn over, insert and pull up a loop, yarn over, insert in the second stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through all 5 stitches. Now in the remaining 19 stitches, we're going to work a half double crochet. Again, we're working within the back of the stitch instead of the top. Now row 6, it's an even row, so we're going to start by chaining 1, and we will work 18 half double crochet stitches across until we have just 2 stitches left to work in. To finish row 6, I'm going to end the row by working a half double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches. So starting in that stitch, and then in the final stitch, and work those 2 together with the decrease. Row 7 is an odd row, so we're going to chain 1, and we're going to start with a decrease in the first 2 stitches. Again, working in the back loops instead of the tops of the stitches. And then the remaining 17 stitches, we're going to work just a half double crochet in the back of the stitch. Row 8, we're going to start by chaining 1, and then because it is an even row, we're going to start by working half double crochets. This time we work 16 half double crochets, and then we'll end with a double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches. I've worked 16 half double crochet stitches, so to finish up row 8, I'm going to work that half double crochet decrease in my last 2 stitches. And again, with this last stitch, it's helpful if you look at the top to find where the V opens to the right, and then tilt it back and go down to the strand of yarn just below it. If you don't get it in exactly the right spot, it'll be okay, it'll all blend together. Row 9, chain 1, turn our work. Because it's an odd row, we will start with a decrease. So in the first 2 stitches, work a decrease. That's my second one. And then working them together. And then in my 15 remaining stitches, I'm going to work a half double crochet, again as always, working in the back side of the stitch instead of the top. Alright, so we've got so far is this kind of, I guess the trapezoid is what I think it would be. Kind of a rectangle, but it's like we took a corner out of the side here, and you can see the knit ribbing kind of effect appearing. And so the idea with this project is we essentially work a bunch of panels like this. We don't have to sew them, they're all worked on top of each other, but we work this panel, and by having these triangles kind of cut out at the top, it's going to create the dome of the hat. So row 10 is where things get shaken up just a little bit, because for this row, we're going to work 24 half double crochets, and we're going to work all the way up to here. We will start by chaining 1. And for the first 16 half double crochets, we're going to just work normally in the stitches from the previous row. And this time we don't do any decreases. So we're going to start here at the beginning, work a half double crochet in the first stitch, half double crochet in the next stitch, half double crochet in the third stitch, and I'm going to do half double crochets until I have 16 half double crochet stitches. So I've worked 13 stitches so far, so this right here is my 14th half double crochet stitch. And in these last 2, it might be tempting to do a decrease because that's what we've been doing all along with this pattern, but make sure that you don't do a decrease. Just work your 15th stitch in the 15th stitch from the previous row, and then work your 16th half double crochet of this row in the decrease of the previous row. We're not actually doing any decreases. So we've done 16 stitches along this edge, and now we have 8 more stitches to go along this edge. The trick here is we want to end up in the top of the very first stitch we worked. So it's one of those begin with the end in mind kind of thing. So what I like to do is I like to go to the beginning of my project and find that very first stitch. And it's this guy right here, where the top of that stitch is pulled to the front. This is where I want to work my 8th stitch left. Well, really it's my 24th stitch, but out of the 8 that I have left to do, we want the 8th one to end up there. Now, as long as you work your 8th stitch in the first stitch that you started with in the very beginning of the project, where exactly you work those 7 stitches in between isn't super important. The most important thing is just to make sure that you space it evenly. I'll go ahead and show you where I work, so that way it might help you as you try to space it evenly. So for my next stitch, I like to come right here to this little spot at the end of the row and work there. And again, we're working half double crochet, so yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through everything. So that's kind of at the end of one of these ridges. And then I like to go halfway between the ridges and insert under there and work a half double crochet stitch. Then work at the end of a row of ribbing and work a half double crochet stitch, so that's 3. For my 4th one, again, we're going to go between the rows of ribbing. And I sometimes like to catch 2 because I think it creates less gaping, versus if you just go under 1 strand, it can tend to pull and create more holes. So that's 4. And then 5 at the end of one of the ridge rows. 6 working between them. 7 working at the end. And then my 8th and final stitch in the top of that very first stitch from the very first row. And at this point I have worked 24 half double crochet stitches up to here. So this is rows 1 through 10, and the good news is things are going to start repeating. Rows 11 through 19 are going to be the pattern that we work for the rest of the project, and we'll just keep repeating that until our project is wide enough to go around your head. But rows 11 through 19 are super similar to rows 2 through 9. And the basic idea is at this top end, the narrower end, we're going to start rows with decreases and then just work evenly to the end. Then in the next row, work half double crochet stitches, and once we get back up here, work a decrease in the last 2 stitches. Then the next row we start with a decrease and then work half double crochet. Next row we start with half double crochet and end up here with a decrease. And finally where we will end up at row 19 is we'll have worked a decrease and then 14 half double crochet stitches. And then once we get to here, we will repeat row 10 and just keep repeating the pattern. Here is the breakdown of that. Row 11, we're going to start by chaining 1 and turning our work. Again, we're going to work in the back loops. We're not going to work in the top. And since we're at the narrower end, we're going to start with a half double crochet decrease. So I'm going to work in these first 2 stitches here and work a decrease. And then in the 22 stitches that are left, I'm going to work a half double crochet in each of those, again, working in the back side of my stitches from the previous row. Row 12, we're going to start by chaining 1, turning our work, and then in the first 21 stitches, we're going to work just 1 half double crochet in the back of each of those stitches. To finish up row 12, we're going to work a half double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches. Row 13, we're going to start by chaining 1 and then turning our project. In the first 2 stitches, work a decrease. So that's in the first stitch, this is in the second stitch, and work it together. And then in the remaining 20 stitches, work a half double crochet. Again, we're working in just the back side of the stitch versus in the top of the stitch. Row 14, start by chaining 1, and we're going to work 19 half double crochet stitches. Again, working in the back side of the stitch to create that knit kind of rib on the other side. To finish row 14, we're going to work a half double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches of the row. Row 15, chain 1, turn our work. We're going to start with that half double crochet decrease. Whoops, I almost go into just working normal stitches. Make sure to start with that decrease. And then in the remaining 18 stitches, work a half double crochet. For row 16, we're going to start by chaining 1, turning our work, and in the first 17 stitches, we're going to work a half double crochet stitch. To finish off the row, work a half double crochet decrease in the last 2 stitches. That brings us to row 17. We're going to start by chaining 1, turning our work, working a decrease, a half double crochet decrease in the first 2 stitches. And then we're going to work a total of 16 half double crochet until we get to the end of the row. Row 18, we're going to chain 1, turn our work, and we're going to crochet 15 half double crochet stitches. And really important with this pattern, make sure that you are counting and double checking, because since we're not working in the tops of stitches, it's easy to think that you've worked somewhere where you haven't really. So make sure that you're counting after each row, because it will help the project go a lot smoother for you, and make sure you don't run into any issues later on with your count being off and then going, why isn't it working? Because when I was working on designing this, there were a couple times I was like, no, I've got this, I don't need to count. And then of course I had problems because I did the wrong number of stitches. So make sure that you're counting when you work on this project. Once you work those 15 half double crochets, work a half double crochet decrease in your last 2 stitches of the row. And now row 19, chain 1, turn our work, start with a half double crochet decrease in the first 2 stitches. And then in the 14 remaining stitches, work a half double crochet in each of them. Now we are back to where our pattern repeats. Rows 20 through 29 are going to be a repeat of rows 10 through 19, and we're going to keep repeating rows 10 through 19 until this distance is enough to wrap around our head. So row 20 is a repeat of row 10, where we're going to work a total of 24 half double crochet stitches and end up in the top here. I'm going to show you row 20 because it's a little bit different than row 10, simply because here we have 14 half double crochets and then a decrease, whereas when we worked row 10, we had 15 half double crochets and then a decrease. But the way I show you row 20, this is the way you will work it for the rest of this project. So for row 20, we will start by chaining 1 and turning our work. And again, we need to work a total of 24 half double crochet stitches. So in the first 15 stitches, we're just going to work a normal half double crochet where we're working in the back side of the stitches instead of the tops. Same thing we've been doing this whole time, and that's what creates the ridges that look kind of like knit on this project. As you get to these last 2 stitches from row 19, you might be tempted to do a decrease. Don't do any decreases on this row, we're just working evenly. I'll work this last stitch in the decrease from the previous row. So that's my first 15 stitches, so we've got 9 more to go to bring us to 24. So again, we're gonna work along here, and the important thing is to figure out where we're going to end up. The last spot we work, we want to be in the top of the stitch that we worked in the top of the very first stitch from the beginning of the project. Let me explain that a little bit better. If we look here where the stitch counter is, this is the top of the very first stitch of this project. So when we worked row 10, the last stitch of row 10 was worked in the top of that stitch. So this right here is the last stitch from row 10. I'm gonna move my stitch counter up there, my stitch marker. Put it in the top right there. And that is where I want to work the 24th and final stitch of row 20. So each time you work this 24 half double crochet stitch row, you want to make sure that your 24th stitch is worked in the 24th stitch of the last time you did a row of 24. So I did 15 stitches along here, meaning I've got 9 stitches left. So my next 8, I'm gonna work evenly along here. And then that 24th and final one, I'm going to work in this stitch right here. Again, I'm gonna work at the ends of rows with ridges. So this is my first one of the 9 that I have left. Then I'll work between rows of ridges. So that's my second one of the remaining 9. Work at the end of a row of ridges. Work between the ridges. I'm going to keep working this down. So this is number 6 of my remaining stitches. Number 7, number 8, and number 9, which is the 9th of my remaining 9, but really it's the 24th stitch for this row. I'm going to work in the top of the 24th stitch from row 10. And it can also be really helpful if at this point you move your stitch counter to the last stitch. That way, when you get to row 30, you don't have to go, which was the last stitch of row 20, you'll already have it marked. But from here on out, we're going to repeat rows 11 through 20 until this distance here is big enough to wrap around your head. This does have a good bit of stretch to it because of the type of stitch we're doing and because we're using the larger hook. And for me, I do have a small head, but for me, I found out that doing a total of 50 rows, so repeating rows 11 through 20 3 more times, is enough to comfortably go around my head. That's what I'm going to do. You can of course adjust this if your head is larger or smaller. And then once I get done with row 50, I will meet you back here and we will stitch it up and then add the brim. So at this point I have worked through row 49. Now I just want to clarify a little bit because I kind of said it a couple different ways, but the part of the pattern that repeats is you want to repeat rows 11 through 20. Whether you decide to make your project bigger or smaller than mine, you want to make sure that the last row you do is a repeat of row 20. So I repeated rows 11 through 23 times. To finish this 3rd repeat, I just have left that row 20 where I worked 24 half double crochet stitches back to the top where we started. I think I said earlier in the video that you repeat rows 10 through 19, and whether you repeat rows 10 through 19 or rows 11 through 20, it's basically the same thing since row 20 is a repeat of row 10, but what I do want to clarify is end your project with a row 20. So I'm going to work a repeat of row 20, which for me will be row 50, and then I will show you how we attach this into a hat. So after you do your final repeat of row 20, you will end up with your hook and yarn at the center part. And again, to know if your hat is big enough, you want to make sure that if you fold it this way, that this circumference is the right size for your head. But once that is the case, we are going to slip stitch these 2 edges together. So to help continue some of that ribbing pattern, I've got my loop on my hook, and on this side, I'm going to insert underneath that back bar of the stitch, kind of like we've been doing when we work our half double crochet stitches. And then on the opposite side, I'm going to go through just 1 loop, so the loop closest to me. Yarn over and pull up through everything on my hook. Go to the next stitch and I'm going to work underneath that back bar, and then underneath just the closest bar of the stitch on my opposite side, slip stitch those together. And keep repeating this all the way down, and that's going to kind of push the tops of the stitches to the inside, and then it's also going to create a similar ribbed pattern on the outside. As another note, be sure to work your slip stitches really loosely. I tend to work my chain stitches and slip stitches very tightly, so I'm making sure that I'm leaving some extra tension so that way this side of the hat can have equal stretch and elasticity to the rest of the hat. I'm just going to keep slip stitching all the way to the end of the hat. So once we slip stitched all the way down the end, this is what our join will look like on this side. Blends in pretty good. This is the join from the other side. Again, blends it in pretty good. Of course, you can sew and stitch it up however you want to get whatever look you're going for. So now the last thing we're going to do is we're going to add, I'm calling it the brim. I don't know if brim's the right word. We're basically doing an extra band here along the bottom, and I'm going to do a couple rows in the gray and then swap to another color. And we're going to do a really similar knit effect. And what's fun about this is it gives you the option to be able to fold it back or keep the beanie longer. So I'm going to turn my work so that way my yarn tail is to the left. I've got this loop on my hook, and I'm going to start working in a big circle around the hat. And I'm going to work 11 rows total for this band. So for the first row, we're going to start by chaining 1. And in this spot here, we are going to work a half double crochet. I'm kind of coming in near where we slip stitched to that last one to join. And again, I like to come underneath at least 2 strands of yarn whenever I insert my hook because it helps it just not create so much of a gap when you work those stitches. And for every row you did to create this body of the hat, you want to work a half double crochet at the end of it. So that's for 1 row. Between my fingers is another row, so I'm going to work a second half double crochet stitch along there. Between my fingers is my 3rd row. Work a half double crochet stitch there. So for me, I did a total of 50 rows, so I'm going to do a total of 50 half double crochet stitches around. I may end up fitting in a 51st one there when we get back to the beginning if there's a little bit of a gap, but basically for every row you want to do a half double crochet at the end of that row. And I'm going to work this all the way around until I have 50 half double crochet stitches. So I've gone around the edge of my hat and I have worked 50 half double crochet stitches. Now this is what I was talking about if you may want to work an extra one. So I worked 50 half double crochet stitches, one at the end of each of my 50 rows. However, when we do the join, where we slip stitch this seam together, it creates a little bit of extra thickness, so it doesn't hurt if you throw another half double crochet in there. So for me, that brings my total to 51 half double crochet. Now it's time to slip stitch, but we are going to create that same knit effect, just this time it's going to run in a circle this way versus up and down. And also because we're working in the round instead of in rows back and forth, we're going to have to go to the far side of the stitch. So I want to find my first stitch from the round, and I put a stitch marker in there just to make it easier to find. And my stitch marker goes under the 2 little pieces that make that V that is open to the left. What I want to do is I want to look behind that V and find this guy right here. That's where I want to insert to work that slip stitch. So again, I'll show you. If we look at the top, we have the V open to the left. Look on the back side of the stitch. It's this piece right here running left and right. So to join this row, I'm going to insert my hook there, yarn over, and work a slip stitch. So that is row 1, we've joined it together, and now for row 2, we're going to work a half double crochet in each half double crochet stitch from the previous row, but we're going to work our stitches on this far back side of the stitch. To start my row, I'm going to chain 1, and in the same spot as my join, I'm going to work a half double crochet stitch. And I like putting the stitch counter, stitch marker in there just to keep track. In my next stitch, I'm also going to work a half double crochet stitch, but to achieve the knit effect, instead of working under the top, I'm going to look behind the stitch and find this piece of yarn that runs left and right behind the V on the back side of the stitch. Insert under there and work a half double crochet. Go to my next spot. Again, look on the back side for the V open to the right. And on the back side of the V that opens to the right, insert underneath that strand of yarn and work your half double crochet. One more time. You find your next stitch, you see the V on the top that opens to the left, tilt it to the back, look for the V that opens to the right, and insert underneath that back bar of the V. And I'm going to do this all the way around, working a half double crochet in each of my stitches from the previous row. So for me, that's going to be a total of 51 half double crochets, and then I will slip stitch it to join just like we did with the previous row. So I finished working my 51 half double crochet stitches of round 2. Again, to join, I'm going to join the same way we did the previous row, where I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to find that first stitch from the row, find that back bar, insert underneath there from front to back, and then work my slip stitch. So this is row 1 and 2 of what I'm calling the brim. I'm going to repeat this row until I have done 10 rows of this. I'm going to do 3 more rows in this gray for a total of 5 rows like this in the gray, and then I'm going to do my last 5 rows in the white, and then I will show you what we do to finish it off. At this point, we are very close to being finished with our hat. I did a total of 10 rows doing this half double crochet border. I decided to do 4 rows in the gray and then do the last 6 rows in white. You of course can make the color swap anywhere you want. You don't even have to do a color swap, and you can extend this section as long or as short as you want. No matter what you decide to do, when you decide that, okay, I'm ready to finish up the project, we're going to finish it off with a round of single crochet stitches. So for me, each round consists of 51 stitches, so I'm going to work 51 single crochet stitches around. I'm going to start by chaining 1, and then in the same stitch where I work my join, I'm going to work a single crochet. And then I'm going to go to my next stitch, and in the back of my next stitch, I'm going to insert where we've been inserting for the half double crochets. But instead of working a half double crochet in that spot, I'm going to work just a basic single crochet. The next spot, go to that back bar and work a single crochet. And I'm going to do this until I have done 51 single crochets around, and I will join at the top with a slip knot and then fasten off. Now that I worked my 51 single crochet stitches all the way around, I'm just going to slip stitch in the top. We're not going to look for any kind of back loop or anything. Going to in the top, insert our hook, yarn over and work that slip stitch, and then yarn over and pull up a loop and fasten off. Now we are super close to being done. Really the only things left to do is to weave in this tail here at the end, and then the other thing is we kind of have a gaping hole at the top, and that's because we worked stitches on top of each other but then just went down the side. So you'll want to get a little bit of yarn and stitch that closed. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I'm just going to pick a spot, run my needle through there and tie it off. And then I'm just going to go around the project and whip stitch this, where I go from the outside and then to the inside. And just work that all the way around and keep cinching it up. And it'll kind of create like a drawstring effect that will cinch this top closed. Once I've cinched it closed, I'm just going to tie it off. And honestly, this hat is the perfect candidate for a pom-pom. I'm probably not going to put one on here today, but that would be a great idea. And then I'm going to use my needle to just weave these tail ends into the fabric where they won't be seen, and then I'll trim them off. I'm going to finish weaving these ends. I'll weave in the white tail from the brim, and then I will show you how it looks when it's all said and done. And here is the finished hat. I think this is so cute. I love how we have this knit looking border, and then even going up and down it kind of creates this knit effect because of the stitching that runs up and down, that little effect that we did with the half double crochet to create that ribbed look. Of course, the hat's super easy to customize just by changing the color, but it's also really easy to change how you wear it. But I hope you guys enjoy this free pattern. This I'm calling the Knit Mimic Crochet Hat. If you make one of these, be sure to tag me at Crafters Autonomous. I think there's an underscore in there. I'll pop it up. Be sure to tag me on Instagram so I can see your versions of the hat. I always like seeing what everyone's working on. And if you enjoyed this project, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a thumbs up on the video and subscribe to my channel, as it helps me grow. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video. Happy crafting!